Hello YouTube land, welcome to another video. Today we're actually going to be jumping into something a little bit more fun, something very creative that we've seen kind of be unearthed, as it were, coming back from almost 2 years ago almost. And we're going to be looking at a strategy that was developed by I would say the legendary Meta Athena meta organization. That they developed when they were still an amateur team, going undefeated through the first kind of breakthrough coming out of challengers, which was kind of contenders for Apex, for those of you kind of a little bit new to Overwatch and some of its past tournaments. Apex was kind of the most prestigious tournament in the pre-Overwatch League era. At least in Korea. You could argue that maybe some of the Western ones were equally prestigious, but I digress. So all you need to really know on that is that Challengers was more a contenders, almost amateur developing kind of tournament or scene that fed directly into Apex. So in this match, we're seeing the meta, basically Meta Athena before they became Meta Athena, fighting their way up into Apex. So this is one of their matches in their group stages to qualify. And this is, again, a team that went 11-0 throughout the regular season in Challengers, undefeated. I called them the first Royal Rollers. They really didn't live up to my praises, if you want to call it that. But I think they're one of the most legendary teams. I think they developed a lot of strategies that opened a lot of people's eyes on what you could do. Again, this is one of the teams that developed their wonky Mei ice wall strategies on Dorado. They had lots of Bastion strategies before anybody else was really using him. If we remember back to when they were using Bastion on Nimbani just to kind of get a little cheeky advantage here and there. They had a lot of differing and creative strategies that kind of broke the meta, ironically. Or not broke, but, tried to influence, I would say. And this was one of them. This was one of the first strategies that I saw that really got me into analysis because of how purposeful everything was in such an early stage, and especially in a region that obviously we know is very strong in South Korea, but it was purposeful in an amateur division, and that really surprised me, and it really kind of turned me on to Meta and the Meta Athena brand. Or the meta team, and we're just going to jump into it. If you watched Overwatch League last night, it's very, very similar. What the meta is going to be running is a very similar strategy to what LA ran. Very similar goals. What they're going to do is they're actually going to be rotating through Hotel and pushing the defenders into Saya player. And what I enjoy about some of this reinvention of the strategy is it's a lot more polished, and we'll get into that when we jump into the two other clips that we have. But this kind of just lays out the framework of what the strategy's general idea is. The only thing that's a little bit different is that I think this composition by the meta does a little bit better with the short distances they have to travel. They actually don't have to force the high ground, and I think that's more of a meta decision that's been developed now in 2018 and not 2016 when this spot is being played. So it's a little bit different, but very, very, very similar. Very conceptually, it's the same thing. They actually don't rotate through Hotel. I remember that wrong. They actually do approach the high ground, drop down, and then push them in. And it poses a lot of questions for the defense that you've probably never experienced this kind of attack formation before. What do I do? You back up a little too far and you give Saya player your back. And this is like a no-no in anything. You almost never want to give people just free sight lines or just your back for free, right? If I'm going to bring up like MMA, right? Like if you give somebody your back, you're just asking you to get either punched in the head or choked out, right? But again, very, very similar. Unfortunately, Saya player doesn't hit the shots that we would like him to, but what's almost equally impressive is that the meta takes a 5v6 and ends up winning it anyways. And that's pretty freaking cool, if I do say so myself. Now, why is this important? Well, for one, this is a strategy that was developed almost 2 years ago. Just kind of wrap your head around that. This is a strategy that was developed by an amateur Korean team that was good, but ultimately placed fourth in their kind of breakout season in Apex Season 2 when they became Meta Athena. And this is the level that they were at. They were influencing the meta 2 years later. That's how kind of ahead of their time they were. And that's the kind of general... obviously, the idea of the video is to highlight the strategy and break it down, but it's also important to kind of remember our roots and go back to where these strategies first kind of arrived into the vernacular of the public. And if we jump into the Gladiators game, you're going to see similar concepts. The most interesting thing, we'll get into why this works, and then I have another VOD of where it doesn't work that came out of Contenders Korea this morning between GC Busan Wave and 7, where the same general concept was applied and it ended up not working. So we're going to see 2 successes and a failure. And this is an important note that I think people are going to gloss over, is that Surefour stays on Brigitte until the team is ready. You can actually see him, if we back this up a little bit, you can actually see him looking at iRemix's monitor. I'm pretty sure iRemix is sitting next to him, and he's just staring at his monitor. He's just waiting. Why is he doing this? So if we kind of think about Brigitte, she's actually kind of small in stature, and she would, in theory, run with this composition. If we kind of close our eyes and I tell you the composition, you probably imagine her very close to the tank line. So what they're banking on, or at least what I'm kind of speculating that they're doing, is that they're moving quickly enough so that when the team hits tab and notices that, oh, they're running, you know, GOATS comp, or whatever you call it, quad tank, or, you know, 3-3, whatever you want to call it, they think the Brigitte is with the death ball that's moving around to reposition, when in actuality, he's sitting in spawn waiting to swap. And this can go 2 different ways. And I think this is kind of the next level up to the strategy, is where, okay, this has become kind of entered into the diction of 2018, you know, Overwatch League playoffs meta. Now, how can we evolve upon that? What we do, I think, is we actually do rotate the Brigitte out of spawn, and they think we're bluffing, right? So it's like a counter bluff where we're actually going to just steamroll you on the high ground with the Brigitte, and that'll make a lot more sense when we get into the VOD that it doesn't work, because it'll abuse positioning. But again, not to jump ahead of script here, we are going to wait for the team to get in position, and then you're going to see Surefour swap onto Widowmaker. The team will push London Spitfire into his sight lines like so, and he will pop shots. Now, what's interesting, and the reason why I think this works, is because London forfeits the high ground for free. They completely don't see this coming. They're completely blindsided by this. I think they actually did believe that Brigitte was rotating with the kind of death ball, so they were totally okay with kind of taking a ground war, because LA was not going to have any kind of long to mid-range threats, so they would have to drop down with them. So they were just going to take a ground war. But what they didn't expect was to have Surefour sitting in spawn, waiting to swap to the Widowmaker, and then decimate the enemy team. And unfortunately, it was the rotation that kind of ultimately sealed the deal there. Just like how in the meta versus Rhinox Gaming Titan, it was the positioning that was the problem, and not necessarily the Widowmaker. The Widowmaker obviously is a huge deal. If you can just get free shots on Widowmaker, that's potentially game ending. But ultimately, this is a positional abuse of power, where the meta and LA Gladiators is abusing a better position and forcing the enemy into a worse position, if that makes sense. And if we open up the GC Busan versus 7 game, we're actually going to see a team kind of counter this strategy for the most part. So again, 7's running a very similar strategy to what London was running. GC Busan Wave, again, same thing. They're going to rotate around. Edison is going to sit and spawn as Brigitte. And this is, again, this is the, I don't know, maybe 12 hours later, 14 hours later. this is something that I'm sure these teams have seen. Maybe it's actually run quite a bit in scrims in Korea, because this is a strategy that was developed in Korea, so I can only imagine that some other team has probably used it before. Kind of seeing MetaThena run a similar strategy and try to adopt it and try to, you know, refine it down. But watch exactly what 7 does here. They actually kind of identify what's going on. They keep in mind that they haven't seen the Brigitte at all. So if you don't see the Brigitte, where can she be? Well, she could be flanking. Why would a Brigitte be flanking on her own? Doesn't make much sense. So she's probably in spawn. And you'll see once Edison swaps to Widowmaker, Bazzi's actually waiting and is going to mark him. You see? The second they've identified this, they know of and have a very clear game plan of what they want to do. They're totally cool with staying on the high ground with Orisa, D.Va, Junkrat, Mercy, and Zenyatta, and taking a high ground fight. You're not going to be able to push through that. Yes, you could maybe blanket with defense matrix and push through, but it's going to be rough. You're going to take a lot of residual damage, and that's ultimately what kind of breaks this push, especially on the high ground, this kind of 5v5 tank push from GC Busan. And 7 does a very good job of identifying and kind of countering the strategy on the fly. Now Bazzi doesn't get the headshot here, but it's the fact of the matter. They immediately know what to do, and that's really impressive to me. But what's more impressive is that I'm a history nut, and I love seeing strategies that were developed by not only one of my favorite teams, but I would say one of the most influential teams in Overwatch to date, even though they really never won anything. They didn't place very well, but they were very creative in what they did. And seeing them affect the meta in the Overwatch League playoffs is actually super, super cool. And if we look at, you know, who was on MetaThena, right? Saya player, who's now playing for the Florida Mayhem, who has kind of infatuated a lot of the general community these days with his flashy Widowmaker play. And that's exactly what he was known for. He was known for his McCree, his Tracer, and his Widow. His hit scan is very, very, very good. Libero. I mean, what's more to say about him? You know, he's the flex god. He plays everything. He's played everything throughout his career. He now plays on NYXL, who's looking to win the first season of the Overwatch League. You've got a player like Hoon, who maybe not a lot of people know about. He's kind of the OG Zarya one trick. He kind of, I wouldn't say dictated, but he was the I wouldn't say the catalyst either. He was probably the focal point to MetaThena's success when they were successful in Apex Season 2 and getting their 4th place. They kind of developed a very clear style on putting him forward, nano boosting him, and actually ramping into more grabs, allowing him to do a lot of damage. Very, very skilled Zarya, and he still is, I believe he's still playing on Metabellum and trying to, you know, just waiting for him to become of age, and probably will be scouted. I don't know if he'll be signed, but he'll definitely probably be scouted, and somebody will probably try him out. But there again, yeah, I just, you know, saw that last night, that LA Gladiators game, and I had to make a video on it. I knew it was going to be important. I knew it was going to be very buzzworthy. And yeah, I can't not talk about MetaThena when I'm given an opportunity. So if you liked the video, please let me know. If you have any other questions or anything you'd want me to kind of cover or break down or talk about, let me know. Thanks for the 1K Twitter followers. I appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who follows me. And if you don't, please do. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video, and hopefully that won't be in 3 months from now. So I will see you guys. Take care.